Hey, everybody, you're listening to and watching the Comic Book Bears podcast. I'm Bill Zanowitz.
I'm Bryan Pittard.
And I'm Steve Morey.
And we are your hairy, heavy homos that talk about comics, but you don't have to be a hairy, heavy homo to listen in, or in this case, stream in. And we are coming to you from our homes with the first post-election show of ours.
I'm wearing blue for the occasion.
Oh, God.
I'm wearing tacos.
Steve, I'm wearing the shirt you got me.
The Chicky Nuggies?
The Chicky Nuggies.
Oh, that's adorable.
Yeah.
Chicky Nuggies.
Yeah. So, Bryan, out of the three of us, you were in the most urban area. Did you celebrate outside when things went down last Saturday? Or
Hell no. No, I'll tell you what. Let me tell you about Saturday. So Saturday was a very interesting day. Saturday morning, I went up and got vegan donuts from downtown Seattle. Already, it sounds ridiculous, right? But when I was downtown, I did see a little bit of celebration. It was still fairly early. It was like 10 o'clock in the morning. So, things had just sort of, been confirmed and people were just, but there were people on the street. I honked and waved and all this stuff, and it was great. Saturday night, we celebrated, but only in a way that you would as a gay man who bear identifies, with a Barracuda virtual party that I shared with you gents, but was probably well past your bedtime. And I actually got to celebrate with our former co-host, Matt Broussard, who was there and showing off. We all had... So there was a best butt contest that Christine, you guys familiar with the drag queen, kind of crazy looking... Anyway, yeah. So, drag queen that's like dark and dirty. Anyway, but it was a very fun environment. A lot of people, I think, were kind of relieved. I mean, you could just sense that people were a lot more relaxed and having fun in this virtual environment because, again, no way we're going out and having these parties in real life, at least, that I'm going to be a part of. But no, I think Saturday overall felt like a huge weight had just been taken away.
Yeah, especially with the unreal stress of the Tuesday night before. I mean, Lord,
Tuesday part 1, 2, 3, all the way through the end of that week. Yeah.
Jeez, I mean, that was a week ago. That was 1 week ago.
I can't. I mean, we were talking about doing a show last week, and I think we were all in just such a bad or anticipatory. I think by Thursday we were feeling a little better, but
yeah, absolutely. When when the counts from the mail-in ballots were happening, and on Saturday for me, I went out and got one of my prescriptions, and I think I got bread, and then I came home, and it was like they made the call about 10 minutes prior to that. So, there was a lot of texting going on. I did end up going into Princeton University campus, and it was a celebration, but it was like very much socially distanced. I mean, people were very cognizant of the space that you should have, but just seeing people dance in the streets, I mean, it's like we forgot what happiness was for 4 years. It really felt that way. And, I know we're in for some crazy shit from him and his supporters. I know this isn't over, but there's no way that wasn't a big exhale. And,
well, and this is, I think, the first election in 20 years where we've had such a close call on, I mean, it was several states this time, but like in 2000, we had to deal with, everybody had to deal with Florida. Like, what's going on in Florida? What's so wrong with Florida, Bryan? Because you were there at the time, I assume that it was your fault. But that was before people were able to basically just constantly refresh stuff on their phones. Nobody had an election tracker on their phones. That would have been ridiculous at the time. Even basically going online, at the time with AOL or whatever, however anybody was getting online, even then, still like refreshing constantly to get the news was not something people did. You watch TV, you watch you watch CNN, or MSNBC or I guess Fox News at the time. But that was it. Like now with this election, people were basically updating multiple times an hour just to get like the latest vote counts. You had different media organizations calling different states at different times, whether they chose to or didn't or whatever. It was just one big, kind of crazy cluster, but it was crazy because it was so quickly updated. Everything was so quickly updated. You would have a new article, and then two hours later, the vote counts would change, and then the message would change. It was such a constant, lively thing. Whereas, 20 years ago, it took them over a month and a half to get to the point where the recount was stopped by the Supreme Court within 400 votes. And here
that's the funny thing. The margins are so different. I keep telling people who are like, because I followed the 2000 election very closely. I was in Palm Beach County during the recount because I was visiting my family, and the margins are like no state that's even close is within like that little number. Like they're all in the thousands. Okay. So like it's just so weird and surreal.
What is Biden's count in Pennsylvania up to now? I think 67,000.
Yeah, it's in the upper 60s, I think. Yeah. So but it's not just one state; it's multiple states that are in the tens of thousands now or whatever. So
nowhere is there a margin of a couple hundred. We don't have any of those states' situations now.
And Georgia's going to do a hand recount, and I believe they're the only ones that are so far confirmed. Although I think they said Wisconsin probably also have a recount, but a hand recount. Other than taking forever, it's like what you're going to get a couple hundred either way. Like it's a scratch.
It usually evens out.
Yeah.
So you have the more important thing though for Georgia with the hand recount is the down ballot races.
Yeah.
True.
So we may see some difference there. The two Senate races are going, right to runoff. But. I'm still so nervous though, and I said this yesterday. When Mike Pompeo said that shit from the podium. Yeah. Out of all of those people, he's the one that scares me the most because But just apart from the ideology, he is remarkably well educated and accomplished. He is very savvy, and I think he's too much of an intellectual to really appeal to that base, but if he finds a way to do it, he's the one that scares me the most.
In terms of running in the future, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't think that he would be he would get much of a party unification behind him. I don't think a lot of people would vote for him in a primary. I think that would be kind of a non-starter for him. That's the thing.
But crazier things have happened.
Well, yeah. The Republican primary in 2016 was definitely a popularity contest in a very interesting way because you had some career politicians that got booted pretty quick and then some that hung on. You had the party upstarts like the Marco Rubios and the, I guess that's pretty much it, doing relatively well early on. And Trump just surprised all of them because he encouraged and excited a bunch of voters that normally wouldn't be all that excited about primary voting. Because primaries usually don't excite people all that much.
We've got some comments here. Our buddy Jim. Good evening, handsome gents.
We haven't got rid of him yet.
He's getting of the Cheeto monster. I like that. We also have Ray Martinez here. The evil is defeated. Again, let's not put all our what is our cart before our horse or whatever. And then John Runyon. We appreciate. We will. What is it? We will serve if nominated or something.
All I know is there's always that adage about the relatability of a candidate. He feels like somebody that I, could have a beer with. I don't want anybody remotely like me near the White House. I don't want that. That's not a good thing.
Somebody with the nuclear codes and the direct contacts with the aliens.
Jesus. Yeah. Scary. Enough about
it's been
that.
interesting.
Enough about that. We're happier. Let's just put it that way. So we have a very rare thing that happened today in that both Steve and myself got DCBS boxes. So we've never done unboxing on this show, but we're going to do it tonight. And Steve's what was your backstory? This was a replacement. They basically left a week of your books out.
Not a week. They left half. They left about half of my floppies out. I've cut back quite a bit on ordering stuff through them. I used to basically just do the full bundle and just go, But
on DC and Valiant.
DC and Valiant, and of course Valiant no more bundles anymore because they don't have enough books. And with DC,
there's no more bundles either.
There's no more bundles either, but a lot of the same general discounts apply. But it gives you an opportunity, if you don't go through the bundle, to just look at the ones that you want to read, which, I have problems with getting books that I will probably not read ever, or maybe not for a very long time. But also to explore variant covers that you can't normally find, because they do a really good job.
Yeah, that is true.
Getting about variant covers out there, which is what I usually get if I'm going to be getting anything through that. So I got a good number of the books. I got all of the trades that I had ordered and, incidental stuff. But as I was going through the checklist, I was like, where's this one? I kept looking back into the box and looking at the pile that I had that I was going over and checking everything off. And I'm like, there's no way that I have enough comics left compared to the list. And lo and behold, they had shorted about 19 issues, which is, I don't, compared to you, boss, I do not have an enormous order every time it comes. So when, half of the books are missing, it's pretty noticeable. But yeah, so that was me. Now your problem, well, I guess it is a problem. It's just something that you've been experiencing the past several deliveries. Tell us about that.
Well, it's been a situation where now, Steve, correct me if I'm wrong. You were twice a month and then you went monthly. Okay, so I've always been monthly because I'm cheap, and so it's like in some ways I'm like with the dollars, like fly bitches fly, and then in other ways, I'm very. My adage was penny wise, pound foolish is still wise. So it's hard for me to spend money on twice monthly shipping and stuff like that. Yeah. So, but yeah, for the last year, I would say, if you have been if you have been somebody that engages in the monthly shipping from them, the dates that you've been receiving your orders have gone farther and farther back into the month. The most extreme was the 20th of the month. Now I know that there's a lot of growing pains with lunar distribution. But they seem to have gotten better. I know that they've definitely upgraded the numbers of their staff in warehouse. So hopefully we don't have these problems. I'm very glad to see that you had a very quick response. I did have a very quick response when I was missing 19 books, but there were other issues where you just never heard back. And I hope that those days are gone. And because for years it was a very reliable service. Years. I mean, if there was an issue, if you had a book and there was like a kind of bend in what they gave you, had another copy of it in 3-4 days. So I do miss when they used to give you Christmas presents, though. They don't do that anymore, but that was fun when they used to have like little Christmas presents.
I like free shit. I'll take any free shit.
Yeah, I got a nice, but it wasn't anything I want, but like an Overwatch Funko Pop, but it was like huge.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. So, why don't you open your box and let's see what you got?
Well, I was joking.
This is great radio, by the way.
So. I know. So I was joking a little bit earlier that I should make it a very ASMR style, like get really close to the microphone and like peel the tape and very slowly No, it's just creepy and weird. I mean, if you want to, you can turn it up and.
I have a confession. I had to Google what that was.
It's so I am one of those people that is highly affected by ASMR, so it does relax me extremely a lot.
Really? Does it now?
Yes.
What do you like there, Steve?
Like whispering.
Is it basically like the NPR ladies talking dirty?
Yes, it is.
Okay,
so
all right.
That's very much like what it. No,
okay.
You don't have to talk dirty. So basically, a lot of ASMR. If you go onto YouTube, there
like Delilah.
Yeah, there are very highly monetized channels that exist out there for all sorts of things. There are people who love the sound of getting their hair cut, so it's just like somebody clipping scissors and pretending to cut hair, just right there.
But what are they cutting?
Nothing, just air, just the sound of cutting.
Creepy.
It's the sound that really does it. It's all about affecting your nervous system through different sounds and different, loudness, quiet, whatever. And there's a wonderful parody video, if you ever have a chance to look it up, on College Humor, where they did an ASMR video of somebody basically getting robbed, and then the cops showing up, but everybody's involved in the ASMR performance. So I'm holding a gun at your head. You can hear it. Let me cock the gun. It was really weird. But weird. Perfect. So anyway, so I've got it open, got the tape off. Opening up the box here. The one thing I do have to say, and this has not changed, even when DCBS had changed their warehouse, is the fact that everything is very well packaged. They pack everything in there. Nothing's moving. I've never had anything, damaged or broken or shifted or anything. They do a really good job there. And then of course they do sort of, bag everything up pretty well. I do spring for the extra bags. So everything that I get is bagged and boarded. And you can get different kinds of bags, but I go for the cheap kind, so it's not a big deal. But yeah, we'll see. We'll see what I got. They came in 2 packs, which I think the reason that they forgot is because they had pulled everything, but they didn't include it in the final package.
In the shipment,
so, which was too bad. So, some of these right away you might actually recognize. There's the Legend of the Swamp Thing Halloween Spectacular right on top. So I get to actually finally read that. I got Batman 100, just because, it's an anniversary issue. Gotta like it. Far Sector, of course, which is such a fantastic book. A bunch of other things here. Young Justice, Deceased Planet. Lee In-hyuk, who is he's a pretty good cover artist, has been doing all of the Flash variants every month.
That's nice.
And I've been getting them each time.
Yeah.
I think they're just gorgeous.
Yeah, I do like that DC for some of the books has had a program where they have the same artists on the variants month after month. The Bernard Chang variants of Batman Beyond are beautiful.
Oh, yeah.
If you ever have a chance to see those, yeah.
Speaking of variant covers, here's Justice League Dark 27.
Okay.
Just a gorgeous cover. And this one, actually, Last God. I don't know if anybody's been reading the Last God series.
Nope.
Very interesting Black Label DC book. It's unique story. Original story, has nothing to do with anything else DC. But it's a very interesting fantasy book. This is a one-shot, Songs of Lost Children. That was actually delayed a couple months. So there's that. And then finally in this pack over here. Don't let me open it. But one thing I do have to say, I end up with so many spare rubber bands and extra backing boards. I never have an issue with those. We have so many lying around, which is great. So, of course, Hellblazer. I love my Hellblazer. This is a book I've been reading that's very interesting. I talked about this a couple months ago. It Eats What Feeds It by Scout Comics. This is
Okay.
3. Very weird, very atmospheric, very cool design to it. Of course, the last book, the third book in the Batman 3 Jokers saga. With,
Very much looking forward to that.
Mm-hmm. Now that I've got all 3, I can probably read them because I haven't. One of the final issues of Teen Titans. Here's the variant cover for that. I'm not sure who did this one. But yeah, I mean, and then also finally got some Valiant showing up in here. Rye, number 8, Aquaman, and then of course Justice League number 55. Here's another variant cover for that as well. So, all in all, got everything that I needed. I do still have to check off the good old pack list, but I think I'm good for that. And I really do appreciate the customer service they provided. This is the first time that I've had such problems.
I've used the murder scissors to.
Should give that a good clip in the mic so you can all hear the satisfying.
Oh, this is bad. This is really bad. This will be like, you don't think you can get murdered by scissors? Look at these babies.
Yeah.
Oh
yeah. Ooh.
So this is a 19-pound box. So you'll see it's very well packed.
Yeah.
As Steve had said.
19.
So right on top, I have my Batman Funko Pride.
Ooh,
Funko
that's
Pop.
The Rainbow Batman.
Love it.
The Rainbow Batman, and they are going to keep doing them year after year, and next year is Wonder Woman.
Excellent.
Oh, yeah, I gotta
Pride
get those
Pop.
then.
Yep. So more bubble pop and more bubble packaging. So right on top, I have some of the trades that I got. Well, they're usually OGNs. The Victor and Nora trade,
pick that up. That's a really great one.
And Maggie Sweetwater's Swamp Thing Twin Branches. Again, from what used to be the DC Zoom and Ink lines. And like Steve has, I have a couple of packs here. 1, 2, 3, 4. And I'm not going to open all because we'd be here all night. But at the bottom here, I have some of the oversized books. I have the second issue of the Hellraiser Rise and Fall by Tom Taylor as writer. And every month I do get previews still. So that's there. I will open one pack and see. There's the Batman 3 Jokers right there. I think I will go.
How many comics do you think are going to be in each pack?
Well, this is what's going to... I don't know with each pack, but I'm going to open the pack that has the packing slip with it, and that'll tell me how many items I have. And this is a little bigger than normal. This is about 5 weeks instead of 4 weeks. And keep in mind, folks, I get everything that's DC. I get everything. Except The Last God. So
I guess you'll just have to borrow mine someday.
According to my list, there are 95 items in here. So I've opened that first pack, and let's see what's some first issue of the Department of Truth from Image.
Good series.
Yeah,
very good series. Very good series.
This was a book that they shorted me a couple months ago because I ordered the variant cover, and then Marvel canceled the variant cover during COVID. So I finally have the first issue of the Khonshu arc in Avengers. So finally have that. DC, bunch of DC, more DC. Here we go with, these are good. I got the Alex Ross variants for the Marvel books that I got. So this is the variant for what is it? X-Men number 13 with Cyclops. So I think I ended up getting 4 of those, 4 or 5. More DC. The True Believers that they had out for Black Widow and for King in Black. There's some interesting issues. So this is the reprint of the first Taskmaster appearance. And when you order them through DCBS, they're really cheap. They're like 60 cents. Yeah. So I usually get a few of those. Oh, here's a topical thing. Here's also Teen Titans. Got the first issue of Villainous that Sony wrote, though, so we have that on hand. Another True Believers of Inhumans, the first issue of Amazing Adventures, reprinted like that.
Those are oversized, right?
No, they're normal sized.
Oh, just looked over.
Every once in a while, they will reprint something like Giant Size X-Men #1, like a book like that, and it'll be a little bigger in page count, but it'll be the same price. Okay.
Well, the Giant Size X-Men that they just redid was obviously full price.
Yeah. Commanders in Crisis #1 from Image, and Steve Orlando writing that.
Yeah,
it's very easy for me to order an Image #1. You don't have to twist my arm too much on that. As we're starting to wrap up the series, the excellent Hawkman. Here's another Alex Ross variant of T'Challa from Avengers.
Wow.
Yeah. X of Swords Handbook. Looking forward to this.
Yeah,
I loves me stuff like that. It loves me my Hotman.
I'm gonna cut out some of those pictures and put them on my binder.
Loving it. Cyclops for New Mutants #13. Colossus. Sorry.
Yeah, Cyclops was.
I'm not that
the other one.
Yeah. So that's what's appeared in the first pack that I opened. So
David Toby has some lovely insight here. It's all the excitement of buying comics without the financial sadness.
David, don't.
No,
there is some sadness that comes with buying.
We know. We know the sadness. We know.
Yeah, you're taking the sadness for those of us who don't have the joy that is opening boxes. Like that.
So
it is like when it does show up, it is very much like a comic book Christmas.
Yeah, it's like a little tiny Christmas.
You just pull them out and you're like,
but it also is a Christmas that you know you're gonna like everything in the box.
Yeah,
when you open it. So, Bryan, with your move to digital, is there anything that you are still buying in physical form, or it's all out the door?
I have had and I've talked about this. There are stores here in Seattle, in the Seattle area, that I want to go patronize. I do want to support. It hasn't happened yet, but obviously it's on the list. So when I go back, I think the books that I would buy physically would be some kind of special edition-y kind of things, #1s, that kind of deal. I might go back because I have a bunch of the X books from the last, I basically just stopped buying them in January. So pretty much, and then we had less books this year. I could catch up and then just sort of pick up where I left off. But I'm not compelled to yet, so I'm kind of enjoying that. I was actually going to say, if you want to see my unboxing, you go on my phone here and go at a Marvel app or DC. And then just look, I can load my book, and it's so great. But I actually, you reminded me, I need to go to the Funko store in Everett to check on what they have there and report back. Maybe I'll do even like a little video there just to have some kind of, for those people who've never been able to have that experience. It's quite if you like Funkos, you're going to love it. But yeah, no, I don't know. We'll see what books are out when I go back.
In terms of news, we have a little bit of news with some things going on. I guess the most important have been the more developments at DC. They did have another round of layoffs, not nearly as a deep cut as the last time, but still they are lessening their editorial staff and substantially. I guess that's the only way to put it. But one thing that I think is a very bright spot is Marie Javins has been promoted to editor-in-chief, and this gives me a lot of hope because this is an individual that knows what it's like to be creator, knows what it's like to be a freelancer, knows what it's like to be an editor at Marvel, knows what it's like to be an editor at DC, knows what it's like to be the liaison with Random House. I mean, there's a lot of, and plus her work as a colorist. She's seen the industry from various different aspects, and I think it's almost universal. The excitement that creators have had in hearing this news. So, again, tempered by the announcement of the layoffs yesterday, but they didn't pick a bean counter. They picked somebody who knows the industry, and that's very encouraging.
To my knowledge, Marvel has not had similar layoffs, right?
Yes, they have.
Oh, they have? Okay.
It very recently hit. Disney has also been, particularly in ABC and areas, there's been a lot of shifting, but no, they have had
Okay.
tremendous layoffs. I think with Marvel, it's been a little more bottom heavy, whereas DC it's top heavy, where you see more VPs and people at least on a managerial level that are being rotated out. With Marvel, I think it's been more lower staff.
Yeah.
But it has happened. I just don't think the names that have basically there's nobody's names in a book that you would be. I'm trying to be diplomatic about how I say this. But
That makes sense.
But just DC's been a top heavy layoff and Marvel's been a bottom up. So
yeah.
And I don't want to go into corporate speak. God Almighty, I hate that. Oh, okay. I had
the right size.
There was a woman I had to deal with, and she spoke in corporate speak, but she got the concepts wrong all the time. Where it's like she was using bandwidth in a way that nobody in there, like a Martian, could tell you that she was using bandwidth in the wrong context. So,
I love that.
Yeah,
Hearing
there's some
olds.
people like that. They can't converse with people in the workplace without going into that mode. It's weird.
The military is even worse because you have a combination of office speak and acronyms. So you can sit there in a meeting, and I've had this experience where you just do not know what is being said, what it means. It's bewildering. It's yeah.
Would you have known what they were talking about if they had spelled it out?
You would at least be able to go, oh, that's a weapon system. Oh, that's a training system. Oh, that's a process document. Oh, that's a this. But without any of that, because there's just so many that people just go, oh, you know what a TPS is. You know what a ECR. You know what a blah, blah, blah. And if you don't, yeah, you got to ask stupid questions. And then, yeah, no one likes that.
Yeah. Yeah, never fun. Especially, because I've worked with a pretty large multinational company that is famous for pioneering a lot of different concepts at a corporate level. And then when they went through a merger with another equally, if not more massive and influential corporate beast with a very different set of concepts and acronyms for everything, it was a very interesting process of transfer. I think a lot of people were using acronyms not really knowing that they meant very different things on the other side of the corporate boardroom, because they were conceptualized very differently by the other company. And I remember sitting in one of those meetings, and it's like, can we clarify that they are using that the same way that we are using it? Because if they're not, then this is a very different conversation that we're having. It's like, oh, good idea. Let's get some definitions out here. So, corporate. And I'm sure legal speak is just as exciting.
Let me try on mute. Legal speak isn't legal speak. I can follow a little bit better. It's just, people that engage in are such assholes that, that a good attorney, as far as I'm concerned, bypasses that nonsense and is able to encapsulate information for a layman in a very economical way. If David Toby's on here, maybe he can chime in. But there's somebody here coughing during my show. That's not me.
Tell Reba McEntire that she needs to go back outside.
All right, so as I was approaching the handover here, we've talked a lot about non-comic book stuff, and I think it's time that we talked about some of the funny book stuff. So, Steve, why don't we plug you in first, and you tell us about something you're reading that you're enjoying?
So, one of the things that I did pick up for the DCBS, or from my DCBS box this past month, and it was the one that came in already, that I didn't have to wait for. One of my other interests, and it's not really a passion so much as sort of a minor hobby, but I enjoy listening to and watching true crime. Not a lot. I'm not an expert. I'm not a massive murderino, but I do enjoy my true crime. I do enjoy my murder stories. I enjoy my MFMs. And one of the stories that they talked about several years ago on their program was the story of the Papin Sisters from France, and they were a duo, two sisters who were hired and employed as maids in service of a family. And in one night back in 1932, I believe, they committed a very gruesome and grisly murder of their employers, the mother and the daughter. The husband escaped, probably being involved in the death and losing his life himself because he was out of the house at the time. And both women were tried, and the older sister, Christine, was found more guilty, I guess, than the younger sister. The court found that the younger sister may have just been influenced by the older sister. And the older sister was originally sentenced to the guillotine. It was commuted to life in prison, but she died only 5 years after from basically a broken heart. She's listed as having wasted away medically just because she was separated from her sister. Her younger sister did serve her prison sentence and was released into the public, and she died after a long life. So, but the story is very fascinating because you don't know too much about these sisters. There are a lot of rumors. There are a lot of insidious histories about their lives growing up, how they were children of abuse and had experienced a lot of really bizarre things that were pretty commonplace in the lower classes in France back in the period right after World War I. And there were also rumors that they were incestuous, that they had a shocking romantic or sexual relationship, two sisters. Oh my God, But whatever the true story was, these were both very close sisters who really only had themselves and each other. And they both found themselves in the employ of the same family and worked there actually for about 7 years before, 6-7 years before this incident, before they murdered the wife and daughter. So I was really excited to see that Katie Skelly, who's famous for several major works, one of them her most famous being Nurse, and has a very interesting art style, decided that she was actually going to be writing a not necessarily a biography of the two, but sort of an interpretation, artistic interpretation of their lives right leading up to the murders. And the book is called Maids. It's put out by Fantagraphics Books. And of course it's Fantagraphics, so it's beautiful. Beautiful hardcover, just really nice layout here. Great insert design. I just love that stuff. And Katie Skelly basically pulls all of the heavy lifting in this. She's the writer, she's the artist, colors, etc. But just right away on the first page is one of the more shocking aspects of the murder, was that both Leah and Christine, the two Papin sisters, were very famous for, in the first attack of the two, of the mother and daughter, they gouged both of their eyes out. And so that was the first thing they did, and they were presumably still alive after that, and then commenced with the rest of the murder, which apparently lasted for about 2 hours of torture, just very violent, horrible stuff. In this book, however, Katie Skelly contrasts the violence of the murder to just the intimacy and soft moments of the two sisters being together. They were, they weren't orphans, but they might as well have been. Their mother was, a drug addict who couldn't take care of her three daughters. There was an older sister who was out of the picture and not mentioned in this book. Both daughters were sent away to an orphanage when they were young. Parents were alive, just, can't take care of them, so send them to an orphanage. And the two younger sisters ended up in a convent school. The older sister apparently became a nun. But the other two, as soon as Christine was able to work, she left and became a maid, and then sent for Leia afterwards. One of the things that Katie does in this book is really show just the day-to-day minutia and the monotony of their work. She sort of puts everything together in just tasks with times, so you get to see how these women spend their day, and it's just all it is work. And in between, they have these moments where they talk together, where they, get to share, different things and different perspectives that they've had about their lives. Leia is very devoted to Christine. Christine is, a little bit mischievous, but really cares for her sister. And that, of course, is contrasted with the really, decadent and uncaring lifestyles of the people that they work for. The mother and daughter just seem to be, the usual, rich European family where, everything's just around the, around the aesthetic and around the, around the veneer. Got to marry off the daughter to a respectable man, and I can't look like I'm doing something, and the maids have to do all their work. If I see any spots, it reflects badly on me. Like just very simple things that they have to deal with. And of course, this is all leading up to the very shocking and violent end, which is partially shown in this, and I'm not going to show you, but for the few gory and gruesome moments, the rest of this book is it's a really wonderful portrait of these two girls. It does not excuse what they did, and doesn't give them, a real sympathetic air, but it does allow you to empathize with, with their lives. And, if not their crime, then maybe their motivations for the crime. So, Maids by Katie Skelly. Fantagraphics books.
And that's on Fantagraphics?
Yep.
Okay, cool. All right. Let's throw it over to Bryan. Bryan, tell us about something you're reading that you're digging.
So I got caught up very recently on X of Swords, 10 of Swords. Sorry, I always do that. And it's great. It's not what I thought it would be at all. If you had asked me at the beginning of this miniseries, like, okay, sketch out what you think the arc will be. Okay. Yeah, they go to do this thing, they fight, and then they leave, and whatever. That's not what this is. To its credit. It's 100% to its credit. So where we're at in the scheme of this, because we've talked about this, we've kind of been going through, we don't need to refresh all the backstory, but basically we're in sort of a lull where the heroes from Araco, which are our mutant friends from the X-Men, have gathered, and then the villains from Amenth our heroes from Krakoa, and then the villains from Amenth / Araco have all shown up, and they're all in the Moonlight Starlight Citadel. Sounds like a Japanese pop band name or something, but anyway, they're all there, and they're having
Sailor Moon.
Yeah, thank you. That's probably what I'm thinking of, right? So they're there, and they're getting ready to fight. So there's this nice lull, and then there's this great moment. There's this it's X-Men number 14 with a nice you can't see that at all. It's Apocalypse centric, and it's basically Apocalypse talking to his ex-wife. I mean, they're, I guess, technically still married. I don't know. Divorces are hard when you're in different dimensions, I think. But they're having a lovely moment where they're sort of catching up with each other, and she knows most of what's happened with him because she's found out. Thank you, Steve. Which the sword that he's got is pretty baller, and it's got a great Egyptian sort of like that. The two things that they hold when they're encased and entombed in the sarcophagus. But anyway, they're catching up, and the real story you're learning is his wife. And because his wife was not thrilled about this schism between the two worlds, but was left behind to sort of do what she could. And when they bring her back, when they introduce her in this, and you know that's his wife, she's wearing the helm, the golden helm of the enemy of Amenth, which is this horrible annihilation they keep talking about, which always confuses me. Oh yeah, you got to. Because annihilation in Marvel is very much one thing, and they're using it in a different way here, and I'm like, is it connected? I feel like if you're going to use annihilation in Marvel, you might have a connection, but maybe not. I don't know. We haven't seen yet. But yeah, you get a great backstory, and so I like that an event book, and then this is like throughout all the X books, but so there's not like the main event books or all event books, but they have the space to have a quiet story of this character, and it is made Apocalypse's like lore so much richer to know about all this. It's confusing because you sit there and you think, okay, well, he's been this villain for so long, but then you start to go, okay, he's really a villain in a sense from one perspective, but he's just been trying to prepare the world for this impending conflict he knew was coming. And they talk about, the strongest survive, the fittest, all this stuff. So it really does fit into X-Men lore very well, even though it's a complete embellishment of things that didn't exist before. So yeah, that one's great. They go in and they have dinner with everybody, so they have this lovely state dinner sort of thing, and you get this great world building with what's his name? Is it Jack? I forgot he's like the maitre d'. So Saturnine sends this guy off, and he brings the food from the Twisted Market, and one little silly one-page thing. They're like putting odds on who's going to win what game and what match. Can't think of his name, but I think it's like Jack something. He's got like that English bowler hat look. But yeah, so he's involved. He comes in. They're serving food, and then Wolverine like gets up and is like kind of like being a dick, and then decides he's gonna just stop everything, throw a monkey wrench in, and he just guts Saturnine. And so you get this great like cliffhanger moment. And this is after they've had these interactions, these characters, the X-Men with the Amenth Warriors, or the all the different characters that they've introduced, and kind of sizing each other up and doing these little tests. Some of it fun, some of it serious, but all of it to sort of gauge the competition, right? So you had all that as prelude, and then you've got this great scene with Storm dancing with the Anubis character Death, which was again delightful, and their interchange was great. So there's just a lot of good character moments, not like just action and shenanigans. But the Wolverine thing is a great cliffhanger. I won't say too much more from there because I feel like it gets into spoilers, but what I will say is the competition does proceed as of this week when we're recording. There have been at least 3 major competition fights. And again, the only thing I will spoil is they're not all just straightforward fights. They do things that subvert the idea, which it makes sense because Saturnin's like this sort of Lord of the Fairy, like mischievous, like, is doing all this stuff. It's not straightforward. It also pretends to maybe like, oh, if somebody gets killed, even though there's that whole, they're dead, they're not going to be brought back. I don't buy that, especially because I will say one character that we love seems to meet an untimely fate, but I don't buy it. I mean, it's comic books in general, right? But I especially don't buy it in this context. There's a lot more going on. But I think my favorite's the Wolverine. It's like the most recent issue, the Wolverine one. I think Ben Percy is killing it with Wolverine. I need to go back and read all of his stuff with Wolverine. But the Wolverine.
With Wolverine, okay.
Oh yeah. No, I don't know what he did prior, but the Wolverine stuff has been really solid. So yeah, the fight, Wolverine gets into let's just say he gets into several fights, and it's not always just about him winning. So, or rather, the definition of winning isn't what you think it is. So there's a lot of that kind of stuff that's very like, elves and fairy legend playing tricks on people and all that stuff. So we're only like 6 issues from the end. So I'm really kind of interested to see how this plays out. I'm guessing they're just going to rapid fire blow through this. I mean, they're making good headway. So, I mean, in a couple more issues, I think that part's going to be done. And then it's going to be really interesting to see what happens like after the competition and after there's a winner, and then what nonsense and shenanigans happen. So I don't know. Have you guys been keeping up with this?
I'm behind as far as I was the one that was the most ahead at one point.
Yeah.
I am now so far behind. Again, there are some of the books that are in here. I may be hitting up some people for digital code. Some of the others, but I am as far as I went with our last show when we talked about this.
Okay, Steve, what about you?
I'm caught up except for this week. So yesterday's issues that were just released, I haven't read yet. Like you said, I heard that there were some pretty shocking deaths. Losses, maybe. I agree with you in this kind of context, and the fact that it's Saturnine that we're talking about, and the the omniversal Magistrix herself, that there's something a little bit more to it than like, well, if you die there, then you're dead and you're not coming back, or you're coming back different, or whatever. It's like, I think there's obviously more to that. She plays games, and this is just a game to her. So we'll see what the actual result is. It might just be, somebody wakes up, shakes a snow globe. We don't know. It could be.
It's the kind of world where I fully expect there to be like that kind of, oh, well, actually it's this and everybody's fine. But then again, knowing the writers and knowing the world that they've created, they're also not going to let it be that easy. There will be ramifications. There will be long-term effects. Another thing I kind of didn't touch on, but it's in that Apocalypse episode issue. There's this lovely parallel that Hickman is drawing with the world of Araco and how they kind of had this like council and all these mutants, and they built this fortress, and they kind of walled off against the outer world and did their thing. And you're seeing Apocalypse hear this and then sort of react and sort of discuss how that's different or not from Krakoa. So there is this little bit of a deconstruction of what the mutants are doing in Krakoa. And so I think at the very least, in ramifications, you see things coming out of it that would affect that. As a like, well, okay, this didn't work over here. Let's maybe do it a little differently here. But I think there's going to be bigger implications and ramifications from the conclusion of this whole thing. I mean, the last episode's called Exosword's Destruction #1. So, I mean,
Well, one of the things that I am excited about that does look like it's coming out of this, and it was advertised actually in a couple of the issues, was the new Sword series that is going to be coming in the coming months after this is completed. And I've always been a little bit partial to Sword. I think it's kind of a cool concept. Sword's already played a part in this in the early chapters, or at least the Shard, I think it's called, or whatever their floating space station is. But there's definitely a lot there that they could play with, and I think that bringing back some of that extra, that sort of more sci-fi flavor that's been a little bit missing because they've been really terrestrial for the past year. I'm really excited in that.
I think the going into space part is been telegraphed very clearly because of Hickman's New Mutants stuff he was doing and setting up. Mm-hmm. So I think you're right. I think that's in the cards, so to speak, for the future of this world.
Well, I mean, that's where Amenth is, isn't it? It's just.
I don't understand the topography at this point.
It's a planet somewhere very far away. I think
I think it's in the negative zone. If I don't see how in Marvel you say something is annihilation and have nothing to do with annihilation. like Annihilus. So I feel like there's some negative zoney kind of thing that they just haven't made explicit. But maybe I'm just reading into shit. I don't know. John Runyon had a comment there. Oh yeah, didn't even talk about this, and it's a little spoilery. So Bill, usually you don't care about this, and hopefully our listeners don't. But let's just say one of the competitions is less of a competition and more of a marriage. Surprising everyone, but I think the main participants none the least. It is a special moment. Right after some really bad shit happens. It is weird and unexpected, but also sort of delightful. Cypher does get to rock a pretty awesome flower crown at his wedding.
That's cool.
All right, awesome. So I have one teeny tiny little book. It's just one book. Just one little book. Now, you all know I love crossovers. I love intercompany crossovers. I love crossovers that involve different companies, like Marvel versus DC. I love all that stuff. I love it, love it, love it, love it. I especially love where it's two concepts you never thought you'd see together happen. And now I'm probably revving you for something like some amazing comic book crossover. It's not that, but it is something that means something to me. And this is from American Mythology books. It's a one-shot, and it is Laurel and Hardy meet the Three Stooges. Okay. I'm not a very big Three Stooges fans. I have a very basic understanding of their history, but when it comes to Laurel and Hardy, basically everything from the Hal Roach Studios, Our Gang, Charlie Chase, Thelma Todd and Patsy Kelly, Thelma Todd and Zazu Pitts. I love all that stuff. And to the point where I would say I'm an expert. I would. We're not much in demand these days. So so I have this one shot, again, from American Mythology Productions. And the reason I'm talking about this is every once in a while you come across a book like this that's better than it needs to be. And it's a very trite story. Basically, there's a new home that's being constructed. The husband and wife who are building the home have engaged the Three Stooges to be the carpenters and engaged Laurel and Hardy to be the movers. And hilarity ensues. So it's a very cartoony style, if you can see that there. Really, basically the story I told you, big shock. Bad things happen to the house. Okay, so that's basically the storyline. But if you are used to Laurel and Hardy shorts like the Music Box and Blotto, where things just keep escalating and escalating till it's like basically anarchy, they really tapped into that particular vibe. I'm always hesitant to buy Laurel and Hardy products these days because the IP, apart from the Hal Roach reissues, are basically controlled by Larry Harmon Productions, which is he was Bozo, and I don't feel that there's a legitimate claim to their images. I've never bought that, and unfortunately, there's so few heirs that can sue that his claim of ownership of their IP basically goes uncontested. It's a shame because there's some garbage that have come out, but this is not one of that. This one I'll say is good. So that's my recommendation. I know there's probably this appeals to maybe 17 people in the world, but I'm one of the 17, and that's Laurel and Hardy meets the Three Stooges, one shot again from American Mythology. And if you're unfamiliar with American Mythology, they have a control of a lot of retro properties right now, like Zorro and Bullwinkle and Underdog, and they had a pretty cool Lost in Space, which basically presumed if there was a fourth season, what the first few stories would be. So, so that's my pick.
Who are the writer and artist on that?
The writer and the artist are not people I'm familiar with. Actually, one of the writers, James Kahorick, he has some credits that I'm familiar with. Co-wrote it with S.A. Check. James Kohoric is also the president of American Mythology, and it's illustrated by Diego Tapier. And I wouldn't mind seeing his work in things like Scooby-Doo. Those kind of properties. It's an unexpected surprise how much I enjoyed this. So that's my pick.
So
I'll be back to the superheroes next time, I swear.
The 16 other people that are listening to the show will be buying those remaining issues for sure.
Yeah. So, but before we go on to the Woofs of the Week, is there anything anyone else would like to talk about?
Just two quick recommendations. One is speaking of crossover number one. That it's been hyped ridiculously, and I always get wary about hype, but this book's pretty good. It's Donny Cates on the writing duties, Jeff Shaw and Dee Cunniffe on art and colors, and John Hill on letters. I really enjoy it. It's an interesting concept where all the superheroes in a superhero universe actually cross over into the real world and create absolute havoc. And then, of course, the aftermath after that is that people who read superhero comics are awful people because they're supporting the massacre of all these actual people happening in Denver, Colorado, by superheroes. But it's a really interesting concept. I'm excited to read more. Do I think it's going to be the most incredible thing since Watchmen? No. So, but it is a fun read. And then this one, which I'm a little bit more excited about, even though I hated the first issue, is Origins, number 1, put out by Boom. And the reason I hated it is because it was so short. I wanted more, and I want it now. It is an interesting post-apocalyptic, no humans, an android, I think, creates or actually 3D prints a human baby, and the human baby grows up to be a man named David. And there's a connection with this version of David and the history of the end of humanity that we're hopefully going to find out in the next several issues. It's a 6-issue miniseries put out by Boom. The author I'm not too familiar with his work. It's Clay McLeod Chapman on writing duties with Jakub Rebelka on art and Patricio Del Peche on colors. And it's a beautiful sort of painterly style, very nice inside. Mm-hmm. But I'm excited to read more. I hated the first issue because it ended. There was a last page and it made me unhappy. But it's good. I recommend it.
Did Crossover come out this week?
No, it came out. I want to say maybe a week or 2 weeks ago.
Okay.
When I went out and picked it up, there was like a billion copies of every possible variant on the shelf.
Okay, because I could have sworn that I ordered that book.
Check your packing list.
I'm looking at it, and I could have sworn I ordered that book, but maybe I am confusing it with Department of Truth or whatever the other. Yeah, maybe I am confusing it with another Image number 1. But I've watched a couple of things from Steve's Plex account. It's a little weird that Steve can see what I've been watching, but I did get through.
I don't have any porn, but
yeah. After 2 years, I finally finished up. I'm Dying Up Here.
Yeah,
the series about a comedy store type of establishment in the late 70s, and I did watch the I didn't really. I more listened to the Comedy Store documentary series. It was just on in the back while I was working. I can't stand Joe Rogan, but I do give him a little more respect in regards to him calling out Carlos Mencia for the joke stealing. That was a really interesting sequence in there. And put on a few Old Grey Whistle tests. I know that's something that Steve's been
speaking of ASMR with
doing, which is a music series in the 70s and 80s, and I think it just touched the 90s. I think it just touched the 90s. I'm not sure.
I think it ended early 90s.
Like 90 or 91, something like that. I think mostly to make way for the Jules Holland show. for later.
Probably.
Which was kind of like a more vibrant version of the Ogre Whistle Test. But I've been watching those, and then apart from your stuff, I was able to get through all 10 episodes of Hellstrom, and it's good enough. If that's a proper way of putting it. Some of the acting it's a little one-dimensional, but it was interesting enough. And again, like as I was telling people, I have a very low bar. Like if you ask me, like, will I enjoy it? Like I have a very low bar when it comes to comic book adaptations, because you got to know, when I was growing up, we had nothing. Now we have this abundance. So I carry with that Jesus Christ, I have Jonah Hex on Blu-ray. Okay. I mean, if that doesn't tell you everything,
Oof.
So I have a very low threshold.
I thought of you, Bill.
Yeah.
I started watching Leah Remini after Scientology
Yes!
Aftermath. So, okay, first of all, and you've probably talked about this, and I was just like, I don't know about this. Who's the guy with her?
Mike Rinder?
Yes, Mike.
Also pretty. Yep.
Yep.
And that slight accent he's got, which he's obviously been in the States for a long time, but like that just touch of whatever.
It's like that Sydney versus Clearwater, Florida accent.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I'm only like 5 or 6 episodes in but I just watched the one about the Nation of Islam. Blew my mind. Had no clue, because I like follow Scientology a little bit in terms of being aware of the crazy, right? Coming from Florida, and Orlando to Clearwater is like an hour and a half. Like you kind of want to keep up with what the crazy is, but I had no idea about the Nation of Islam thing, and it's been a ride, and it's coming right off my stuff with the NXIVM. So I finished the Seduced.
I did watch The Vow, and I did watch Seduced.
Yeah,
I got through all of those. Yeah.
It is eerie how similar, in so many ways, NXIVM is to Scientology, but in this I don't even know like how it's smaller scale, but not that much smaller, because I didn't realize Scientology is it's smaller than I thought it was. Right?
They took a lot of money.
Well, but so did NXIVM in certain respects. And you look at their mid-level marketingness, like, if you bring people in, you get a commission on their classes and stuff. Both organizations did that shit. The EM is very similar to auditing. I mean, it's kind of interesting. And so now with the the news, which I think is news since last we talked about this, Raniere has been convicted for like 120 years in prison.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
It is interesting. I wonder at what point Scientology will get that lens of someone coming out and it blowing everything up there.
Yeah.
Well, there's a difference though. There's a difference because NXIVM, I mean, fundamentally there isn't, but legally there's a difference because Scientology is a church and therefore is afforded the protections of a religion, whereas NXIVM didn't purport to be a religion. It was a corporate /
executive success program
tool for personal growth.
Yeah.
Also known as he's going to get super skinny women to be his sex slaves. But I mean, Scientology is protected in ways that NXIVM was not. And NXIVM also had a single major bankroller in the Bronfman sisters. And so once their money was gone, I mean, there's really not there's not the base that they had. That
they threw the book at Claire Bronfman too. I mean,
she got
it's pretty and it's pretty extensive for it's basically the max you could get for the charges that were levied against her.
And what's her name? Nancy. Of all the people,
my God, she creeps me out the most.
She's creepy as fuck. But her daughter is worse, because her daughter took all of Nancy's shit and dialed it into the whole DOS thing. At least it seems like Nancy was sort of DOS, not agnostic, but certainly not as deep into those weeds. So I think she's going to be the one that get off maybe the least.
She only got 20 years, whereas Lauren, her daughter, got 40. So who knows? I mean, that's based on sentencing. So, obviously, what they actually end up serving in prison is going to be very different. But,
And Allison Mack is still under house arrest. So she may have flipped.
I think she did.
I mean, there is sentencing, I think, in January.
Yeah.
But I have a feeling she probably flipped.
The whole thing was seduced, though, as much as it got right to the point, which the vow can certainly take its time, right?
Yeah.
I do think a lot of it was there to really make sure India's record was like scrubbed.
Yeah.
And it's a little obnoxious in that way because I don't have any ill will towards her at all. She was caught up in a bad situation and whatever. But like, oh, I found all these thumb drives and they have evidence and I had no idea. It's like, girl, come on. You took the drives because you thought they might help. And what a surprise. Like, I don't know. Those kind of things make me, they raise my concerns.
Yeah. It wasn't in Seduce, but it was in The Vow. My favorite moment was Catherine Oxenberg when she said, I can't spell NXIVM for shit. That was my favorite moment. And what is the second season of The Vow? Is it covering the trials?
I think
guess
so.
It would be.
Yeah.
They were still filming when the trials started, so I'm thinking they're going to go through that period, adding in a lot of the stuff that Seduce covered that The Vow didn't get to. And supposedly they've got Salzman, they got Nancy to do interviews, they got Raniere to do potentially some interviews, so they're going to get like that perspective in addition. So it's going to be, I'm excited. I don't know why I'm excited, but I'm excited about this. I'm excited about other people's misery.
Yeah, I'm not excited to hear Keith Raniere speak to defend himself. I mean, we've already heard exactly what he's already said. That is very indefensible, but he's going to, in his interviews, he's definitely going to be defending himself. But it doesn't really matter because he's already been sentenced. So, yeah.
So Salzman Nancy only convicted on one charge of racketeering. I don't even know if she's been sentenced yet.
Well, it does seem that she was fairly removed from the DOS experience.
Yeah.
At least,
yeah. I mean,
at least from what we've seen. Yeah.
She obviously she couldn't not know about it. She couldn't not have seen it. She may have refused to believe it, but it's there. It's happening in her house, in her neighborhood, her daughter. It's like there's all of this stuff there. She couldn't have been blind to it because she was part of it from the beginning. So
the one person I would love to hear what happened is Christine Crook. I would love to hear because she got out of town.
Yeah.
Before any of this really happened. So, and she was the one that actually brought in Allison Mack. So I'd be very interested to hear what her experience was. Nippy didn't even know.
Nicky Klein.
Oh, Nippy. Every time Nippy shows up, we just look at each other. We're like, Nippy. Oh, Nippy.
I know somebody that worked with Nicky Klein on a project and said that she was dumb as a brick. And when they had Catherine Oxenberg talking about when Raniere's on the run, and then Nicky Klein posts a picture, like a very recognizable site in Puerto Rico. In Mexico, sorry, yeah.
I can't watch Battlestar Galactica either. David Toby gave us a comment about, I can't ever look at Smallville the same way. Same thing with Battlestar.
Yeah.
It sucks. It sucks. I love Battlestar too. Ugh.
I loved her character in Battlestar. There were so many things, and the same thing with Smallville. Like I'm totally there with you. Chloe was one of my favorite characters, and now seeing her, knowing the person behind it, makes it very difficult because she was there for such a huge part of that.
She was there for the entirety.
Yeah, I mean,
I believe she and Welling were the only ones that were through the entire series because Lana left. Rosenbaum left.
Yeah, he left. And Lois wasn't there the entire time. She came in like maybe the third or fourth season.
And Annette O'Toole went to recurring after a point. So I think it was only the two of them that were through the entire
John Schneider.
I'll still be able. I mean, I can. Also, it's like the point in time. Yeah. Because a lot of the NXIVM activity is after, or at least like if it was during Smallville, it was during the end. But she always struck me as somebody who was like, somebody who did a lot of theater in college. There was always that actress that was like so, about everything. And she strikes me as somebody that I would not have anything in common with.
Well, I think India,
like incredibly moved by everything. Yeah.
Well, that's what India was actually saying. She had mentioned that in in Seduced, but then also even Michael Rosenbaum on his show when he talked about like the crazy situation with Allison and like some other guy from NXIVM that showed up in his house and all that.
Oh yeah, he was talking to Edmondson, and like they just showed up to his place and were like, "We're gonna just make some food now. Is that okay? Okay, thank you, bye." And it was like,
and they like screwed things up and they got into a fight. Like it was really like, who the hell are these people that they think they can, you know? And it was they both kind of talked about that. Allison Mack, when she wasn't working, she was lost as a person. Like she didn't have any self-worth, and so this was a project for her, whether she thought of
which you find a lot with child actors.
Yeah,
which you find a lot. Their entire identity is based around work. And either you become a Jodie Foster that has valuable, important work, or you become like Gary Coleman.
Oh.
Yeah. Or somebody like oh my God, what's his name? From Bad News Bears. No, from Bad News Bears, and then
Jackie Earle Haley.
Jackie Earle Haley was such a big, promising, up and coming child actor, and then like dropped off the face of the earth. Probably had a lot of issues. I don't really know too much about his history, but then came back with a vengeance with Oscar nominated worthy turns in what was it, Little Children, I think, where he played a child molester. He's played Freddy from the new Nightmare on Elm Street. Rorschach from that. I mean, like,
and that amazing turn in Preacher.
Oh yeah,
he was amazing in Preacher.
Right. Forgot about that.
That's somebody who had such promise as a child actor, but I don't think if he had worked steadily that he would have been able to give the performances that he ended up giving.
I really have to hear Rosenbaum's episode on this. Who was he interviewing?
Sarah Edmondson.
Oh my God, I've got to listen to it. Like the second we're done, it's like what I'm doing.
Yeah.
And actually, Brian, I kept meaning to tell you about that. That podcast is Sarah.
Oh, okay.
With a friend of hers that she grew up with, who became a journalist with the CBC.
Oh,
so
cool.
Yeah,
I'll look it up. I need to. Yeah, I need my fix. I can't wait for the Vow season 2.
And they go into more like the thing, like they were talking about that one doctor that was showing all that like really grotesque footage of the women. They go into things like that in much more detail than they did in the series. So it's almost like a supplement.
Oh, cool.
You'll dig it. And Sarah's very Sarah in it.
Oh, I like Sarah. I really enjoyed. I mean, I don't enjoy what happened to her. I think that it's awful. But I enjoyed the fact that she embraced her own ability and her own agency to actually really expose this. I mean, she did some stuff that really put herself in danger, herself and her family, and Nippy, poor Nippy, and her son, in danger of of just really terrible retribution from NXIVM. And hearing the stories from the other women who had been sort of the first cast-offs of Ranieri's attempts, and how much their lives have been completely destroyed by lawsuits and court harassment and all sorts of stuff.
Another commonality with Scientology, right?
Yeah, exactly. They did use suppressive person did show up. It did pop up as something that Keith Raniere said about people, and I was like, that just
Luciferians.
Luciferians.
Remember he called people like the Luciferians or whatever. It's like,
there you go.
It's so insane. I love cults. I don't know. This is the thing. I don't really love cults. I think cults are an interesting artifact of the.
Well, it's just like being a murderino. Like I don't crave. I don't like hearing about people being murdered, but the investigation and the process of discovery, that's stuff I'm fascinated by.
Yeah.
So I totally get it.
I think the Vow's strongest style choice is by not just dumping the crazy right on you at first. It does what the cult does. It eases you into this through positive. Like there's a lot of NXIVM that you're sitting there going, that sounds like a good idea, or that sounds like a really like all of it sounds good until you get to the darker underbelly and the worship. And that first time when you learn it, they call him Vanguard, and that there's this adulation that they have. That's the alarm bells. Like that's the first moment when you're like, wait a minute, this is not right. And it's had me question organizations that I'm a part of, not, like my fraternity for one example. Like it brings into question the ways that organizations kind of bring you in, indoctrinate you, make you feel like you're part of them, which is a good thing, but also break down your barriers to other things that might be bad. So yeah.
All right. Well, we're coming upon the 11 p.m. EST mark here, so we're going to start wrapping this show up. And when we wrap an episode of the Comic Book Bears podcast up, we do so with a segment we call the Woofs of the Week segment. In the bear community, if you woof at a fella, it means you find them attractive. And we have a counterpoint that we employ here. So when we do give something a woof of the week, it's something that we think you, fair listener or viewer, may be interested in sampling. I'm going to start with Steve as usual. Steve, what is your woof of the week?
Well, my woof of the week, of course, is TV related, and for those of you who have it, it is a Hobo Max recommendation, or HBO Max. A wonderful short miniseries. It's only 6 episodes. It is British, so tends to fit. Called 2 Weeks to Live, and this one actually just came out in its entirety on HBO Max. So if you do have the service, you can just watch all 6 episodes. They are short; they're only 30 minutes each. Wonderful. It's just enough to get you hooked, and then just let it autoplay. Just go with it. It goes so fast, and it's wonderful.
We watched 3 episodes of that series last night because it was just, what happens next? What happens next?
Yeah.
It is.
You just want to keep watching, and it's wonderful. And I think the number one reason why I love this show so much is, of course, Maisie Williams. She stars as the main character, Kim, who's been basically isolated by her mother up in the woods somewhere in Scotland with no real contact with the outside world. Her mother's been not just sheltering her, but lying to her about the outside world as being, poisoned by pollution, and it's basically post-apocalyptic. Everything's dying out there, so it's all horrible. And she decides that she wants to. Now that she's old enough, she's 21, she's going to go out on her own and basically try to see as much of the world as she can. And in doing so, also avenge her father's death. Because her father was murdered by a gangster played by none other than Mr. Pertwee, most recently of Gotham, and before that also son of former Doctor Who, John Pertwee. It's absurd. She picks up basically these 2 brothers, one who immediately is in love with her, and the other one is a dumbass who means well. There's also 2 corrupt cops that were on the payroll of someone, some particular criminal underworld figure that also get involved. And it's just wild. And then the mother shows up, and it all goes to hell. It's a fun show. And I'd say in the second episode where she has the fight with Pertwee, there's a Game of Thrones reference thrown in, which I thought was absolutely so well done and perfect and seamlessly thrown in there. So if you didn't watch Game of Thrones, you probably wouldn't have caught it. But Maisie Williams, she's wonderful. So I recommend it highly. 2 Weeks to Live on Hobo Max.
All right, let's go over to Bryan. Bryan, what is your woof of the week?
So funny that you were going to talk about a British miniseries that had just come out on HBO, and I'm like, oh God, you're not talking about The Third Day. That's my pick, damn it. But a little bit before this new series came out, actually a little bit like in September maybe, this British series called The Third Day came out with Jude Law and Naomi Harris, and it's set on the island of Osea, like Osea in England, which is a real island, I believe off the east coast, might be south coast. I don't remember. It's somewhere down that way. And it is very atmospheric. It is very mythologically filled with just Celtic mythology, Sheenagig, which if you Google it, you're going to see some mildly pornographic images, so apologies. But it mixes all of this stuff in with this psychological drama about grief and loss And I think that's where it's its most powerful. I think when it adds all these trappings and all this other shit. It's good. It's interesting. It captures your attention, but the core loss of a child in this married couple's life, and seeing that expressed in Jude Law's like, very well acted visage, and then adding all this psychotropic bizarreness that sort of, I think people have compared it to Midsummer, which I totally see, because it's that whole, oh, it's a nice little community, and then they want to take you and do this stuff to you, and it's a whole thing. But delightful show, bunch of other great actors and actresses, including Emily Watson, who I have not seen in a hot second, but she plays this innkeeper's wife who just destroys her husband constantly in like the way she treats him, and you just don't know why. And it's very endearing, but their narrative does take a weird turn and it gets intense. But anyway, highly recommend it. I don't know that it ends successfully. I think there's a moment when I thought, oh, this is great, and then I'm like, oh, wait a minute, oh, okay, well, that's a thing you can do. Anyway, but check it out. Third Day. It's 6 episodes. It's like an hour each, and I guess there's like some special that they aired live that God only knows how you watch. But yeah, The Third Day on HBO, Hobo Max, as we say.
Okay, my Wolf of the Week is not a British series. My straight concert husband got me this book last Christmas. It's called Meet Me in the Bathroom, Rebirth and Rock and Roll in New York City, 2001 to 2011. And it covers bands, principally the Strokes, but also bands like Interpol, a band that everybody thought was going to break big that never did, called Jonathan Fire Eater, The National, Fisher Spooner. Basically, if you were in New York post 9/11 up until about, like they say, 2011, there was a very vibrant local scene, but these were bands that were local that got hot very, very quick. I've never seen a rise so quickly as with the Strokes. I saw them as an unsigned opening act, open up for a British band called Doves, and literally 8 months later they were headlining like the Hammerstein Ballroom, which is about 2,300 seats. And it captures that element of what post 9/11 New York City was like. I was in law school through the early parts of this, but I still ended up seeing a lot of shows because I'm me. And it's kind of wild looking through this and seeing, them mention, a particular Keen and Moldy Peaches show, and I was there, and the various Stroke shows, various various national gigs. It's there are some omissions. I think the biggest one is Scissor Sisters, because prior to them gaining substantial success in the UK, they were very, very prominent on the local scene. And the other name that you don't see in here who should be in here is Fred Armisen, because trust me, if you went to a concert in New York during this time period, you had a 50-50 chance of seeing Fred Armisen in the audience. He was always at shows. If it wasn't Fred Armisen, it was Iggy Pop. They were all, they probably should be buried in the graveyard. Inscription should say +1. And I'm just going to go to a subwoof, and this. Also, one thing I have to say, it also paid tribute to some bands that were not in the New York area that did have a very big influence. Principal among them, the Hives from Sweden and the Vines from Australia. These are names that, like, oh yeah, I remember them. Also a lot of LCD Sound System. And, I always will treasure my experiences seeing that group live. And it got me to thinking about a band that's profiled in this book that never really made it. I have their whole catalog here, and the name of the group was Radio 4. And if you were a fan of acts like Gang of Four, I think the similarities in the name is very deliberate. It definitely has that fractured post-punk sound. And the other thing I'll say about the book is, if you guys are familiar with books like Please Kill Me or the Johnny Rotten autobiography, or something in a very different vein, Live from Studio 8A, the history of Saturday Night Live. It's done in that style where it has recollections from various people, so it's not from one particular standpoint. Oh, yeahs are in here. They were very important.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So Meet Me in the Bathroom by Lizzie Goodman. Really good bathroom read because you can put it down, put it back, pick it back up, and I call them bathroom reads. So that's my wolf of the week.
Nice.
All right.
It's so funny too, because all those bands that you mentioned, like I was, because I was in college at the time, and I obviously never saw them live because I wasn't in New York, but it was just like that was the music that I was listening to and I was downloading when I wasn't downloading, streaming when I was up at college. If I wasn't listening to it on Radio 3, I was getting those, which was great.
Yeah. And again, these aren't necessarily bands that sounded similar, like the electro clash of Fisher Spooner, which to this day, the show that they played, their first major show in New York at Irving Plaza, was one of the most exciting events I've ever had. And the National, there's a huge difference between those two acts, but they did have a commonality in tapping into this particular sort of vibe that was happening. And I never considered it a scene, but when you look back at it, I guess it was. And this is a good testimony and encapsulation of it. So there.
Cool.
Yep. All right. Well, we're going to wrap this one up in a bow. Again, we are the Comic Book Bears podcast. You can find us on the Twitter and the Tumblr and the Instagram as Comic Book Bears. You can find us on the Facebook as Comic Book Bears Podcast. If you want to listen to us, please do so by downloading us through iTunes, listening to us through Stitcher Radio, or many of the other podcatching platforms. If you want to write to us, please do so by sending an email to comicbookbears@gmail.com. Please tune in next week. Got a really cool special guest that's going to join us next week. So until then, I'm Bill Zanowitz.
I'm Bryan Pittard.
And I'm Steve Morey.
You're going to hear a woof and an explosion. If you're listening, we'll be back next week. Take care. Let me redo that. You're going to hear a woof and an explosion if you're listening, and we'll be back next week. Take care, everyone.